Tracer rounds ripped through the humid night, green stitches of death tearing the jungle canopy to shreds. The ambush was perfect, a textbook killbox, and SEAL Team Serpent was caught dead in the center. Explosions turned the undergrowth into a churning cauldron of fire and shrapnel. Men screamed. Orders became panicked shouts lost in the cacophony. From her position at the rear, Sergeant Eva Rostova, the Recon specialist they treated like a glorified gear mule, was invisible. Overlooked. Forgotten. Her rifle was steady, her breathing a controlled whisper of air. Through her scope, she saw him, the enemy commander, directing the slaughter with cold, precise hand signals from a rocky outcrop. Her squad was pinned, collapsing. The mission was seconds from annihilation. Will she take the shot that saves them all? The shot that no one ordered, the shot that will change everything? Where are you watching this story unfold from? India, USA, the UK, the Philippines? Let us know in the comments where you stand. If you believe in the power of one warrior to turn the tide, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to see courage in action, and tell us what resilience means to you. The world felt like it was ending, but for Eva, it was just beginning. The crosshairs settled, a whisper of steel and glass between life and death. Her finger tightened on the trigger, the cold metal a familiar promise. The world narrowed to that single point of light, that one man who held the lives of her team in his hands. A ghost of her father's last words echoed in her mind, a memory forged in a city of fire and loss. One shot, Eva. Make it count. The crack of her rifle was swallowed by the roar of the battle, a secret between her and the target. The enemy commander's head snapped back, his authority dissolving into a fine red mist that hung in the humid air for a fraction of a second. Confusion rippled through the enemy ranks. The relentless, coordinated fire faltered, becoming sporadic, panicked. It was the opening they needed. Now, a voice roared over the comms, and her team, what was left of them, surged forward, breaking the encirclement. Eva melted back into the shadows, her job done. She was a ghost, a whisper, just as she had been trained to be, just as she had been her entire life. She tracked her team's exfiltration, a silent guardian angel they never knew they had, her movements a fluid dance through the tangled jungle that would have been impossible for anyone else. An hour later, at the emergency extraction point, Lieutenant Commander Valerius did a frantic head count. His face, usually a mask of smug superiority, was pale with sweat and fear. "Rostova," he barked, his voice cracking. "Anyone have eyes on Rostova?" Silence. Chief Petty Officer Grizz Davies, his face grimed with mud and gunpowder, scanned the impenetrable darkness. "Last I saw, she was pinned down on the west flank. That whole section got chewed up. We lost her, sir." "She's gone," the words hung in the air, heavy and final. "We move out," Valerius commanded, his relief barely concealed. One less loose end. One less person to witness his cowardice when the firing started. Far behind them, Commander Jax Garrick watched the drone feed in the sterile quiet of the command tent. He wasn't watching the main firefight. His eyes were fixed on a lone heat signature, a phantom moving with impossible grace on the periphery. He rewound the feed, isolating the moment the enemy command structure collapsed. He saw the faint muzzle flash from an impossible position, a shot no one else could have made. He cross-referenced the team's positions. It was her. Rostova. The quiet specialist Valerius had dismissed as box-ticking baggage. Garrick leaned forward, his scarred face illuminated by the screen. "Get me a recovery bird in the air," he said, his voice a low growl. "And tell Valerius his report is incomplete." The sun was a brutal, white-hot eye in the sky when Eva finally broke through the last line of jungle. She walked onto the tarmac of the forward operating base not like a survivor, but like a soldier returning from patrol. Her uniform was torn, her face streaked with camouflage paint and dirt, but her eyes were clear, her rifle held at a low ready. The members of SEAL Team Serpent stared as if they were seeing an apparition. Valerius, who had been loudly recounting his version of their heroic breakout, stopped mid-sentence, his face draining of color. Rostova, he breathed, a mixture of shock and fury. He strode toward her, his posture reasserting his authority. "Where in the hell have you been, Sergeant? You abandoned your post. You broke protocol." Grizz stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Sir, with respect," the entire flank collapsed. "I don't care, Chief," Valerius snapped, his eyes locked on Eva. She ran. While good men were dying, she saved her own skin. Eva didn't flinch. She met his gaze, her own as cold and hard as chipped granite. "I eliminated the enemy commander. I provided suppressive fire that allowed for your withdrawal. My post was not abandoned, it was adapted to the tactical reality." Her voice was quiet, devoid of emotion, but each word was a precisely aimed bullet. Before Valerius could retort, a shadow fell over them. Commander Garrick stood there, his presence silencing the entire area. He looked past Valerius, his gaze settling on Eva. He saw the exhaustion etched into her features, but beneath it, an unbreakable core of steel. He had seen that look before, in the eyes of the best warriors he had ever known. "My office, Sergeant," Garrick said, his voice cutting through the tension. Now, he turned and walked away, not waiting for a reply. The dismissal of Valerius was absolute. The lieutenant commander stood there, his fists clenched, his face a mask of impotent rage as the woman he had written off as dead walked away with the one man who could shatter his career. The air in Garrick's office was cold, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat outside. Maps and tactical overlays covered the walls. He didn't offer her a seat. He simply stood, studying her, his gaze intense, analytical. "Your official report will state that you were separated during the firefight and evaded enemy patrols until you could safely return," he began, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Unofficially, you took a 600-meter shot in near-zero visibility, under extreme duress, and decapitated an enemy command element. A shot Lieutenant Commander Valerius and his team of decorated operators failed to even identify." Eva remained silent, her posture rigid. She knew this was more than a debrief, it was a crucible. "Valerius believes you're a coward," Garrick continued, circling his desk. "He sees a woman who doesn't belong. He's a fool. I've reviewed your file. Top of your class in marksmanship, strategy, and survival. Yet you've been relegated to support roles your entire career. Why?" "I follow my orders, sir," she replied, her voice level. "And your orders have been to be quiet, to be unseen, to not make the men uncomfortable," he finished for her. He stopped in front of her. "Those orders are now rescinded. There's a high-value target, a weapons trafficker codenamed Sharon, operating out of a network of caves 3 clicks north of the Ashgar Pass. Intelligence on his exact location is thin. Suicide mission, by all accounts. Valerius has been lobbying for the mission for weeks, eager for a medal." He paused, letting the weight of his next word settle. "The mission is yours. You'll lead a 4-person fire team. You pick your path, you make the calls. Chief Davies will be your second. Prove me right, Sergeant." It wasn't a request. It was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down. Valerius would see this as an insult, a direct attack on his authority. He would do everything in his power to ensure she failed. "I understand, sir," Eva said, a flicker of something new in her eyes. It wasn't hope. It was resolve. Valerius was incandescent with rage. In the Tactical Operations Center, he watched the mission assignments change on the main board, Eva's name appearing next to Operation Sharon. It was a public humiliation. He cornered Grizz near the armory, his voice a venomous hiss. "You're working for her? The coward who ran?" Grizz met his gaze, his loyalty torn. "I'm working for the commander. He gave the order." Garrick's gone soft, Valerius sneered. "He's putting a little girl in charge of a mission that will get you all killed." Don't you forget who your commanding officer is, Chief. You watch her. You report every mistake she makes directly to me. Understood? Grizz gave a curt, non-committal nod and walked away, the conflict churning in his gut. The mission briefing was tense. Eva stood before her small team, Grizz and 2 other seasoned operators, her presence quiet but commanding. She laid out her plan on the holographic map. It was audacious. Instead of a direct assault, she proposed a high-altitude, low-opening jump into the mountains miles from the target, followed by a 2-day trek along treacherous, unmapped ridges. We go in silent, from an angle they'll never expect, she explained, her finger tracing the route. Standard infiltration routes are all monitored. They're expecting us to come from the valley. We will come from the sky, from the command center. Valerius watched via a live feed, a smirk on his face. She's insane, he muttered to a comms tech. She'll lose them on the mountain before they even see the target. As Eva's team geared up, he accessed the intel feed for their mission. With a few keystrokes, he subtly altered the satellite imagery, shifting the location of a known enemy patrol route, routing it directly into the path Eva had chosen. He would let the enemy do his dirty work for him. He would make it look like a tragic, but predictable, failure of her leadership. The wind howled around them as they descended through the darkness, their parachutes opening just seconds before they would have hit the jagged peaks. They landed hard, but together. For 2 days, they moved like specters through the unforgiving terrain. Eva was relentless, pushing the team, yet never asking more of them than she did of herself. She moved with an eerie certainty, her senses alive to the mountain. Grizz watched her, his initial skepticism slowly eroding, replaced by a grudging respect. She was a natural. On the second night, as they neared the target zone, Eva called a halt. She lay flat on a rocky ledge, her binoculars pressed to her eyes, scanning the valley below. The intel Valerius had provided showed their path was clear for another 3 kilometers. But something felt wrong. The air was too still. The silence was too deep. Something's not right, she whispered, more to herself than to Grizz, who was beside her. Intel says this ridge is clear. Intel's been solid so far, Grizz countered, though a seed of doubt had been planted in his own mind. He trusted the data, the years of established protocols. Eva trusted the feeling in her bones, a primal instinct honed by loss and survival. She remembered her family's apartment building, the way the silence felt just before the missile hit. It was the same silence. The silence of a predator waiting. No, she said, her voice firm. The intel is wrong. She pulled out her own datapad, switching off the link to the command center's feed. She activated a passive sensor array, a piece of non-standard gear she had packed herself. It scanned for heat, for movement, for the subtle electronic signatures of modern weaponry. The screen lit up. A dozen heat signatures were concealed in the rocks less than 500 meters ahead, directly on their path. An ambush. They were waiting for them. Valerius, Grizz breathed, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. He fed us to them. The betrayal was cold, absolute. Valerius hadn't just made a mistake, he had deliberately sent them to their deaths. Eva's face was a mask of ice. There was no panic, no fear. Only a chilling focus. The rage was there, a cold, dark thing deep inside, but she compartmentalized it. Rage was a luxury she couldn't afford. Survival was the only currency that mattered. She looked at Grizz, whose face was a mixture of fury and disbelief. He thinks we're predictable, Eva said, her voice a low whisper that cut through the wind. He thinks we'll walk into his trap or turn and run. We're going to do neither. Her mind was already working, processing the new reality, turning the enemy's strength into a weakness. They knew where the ambush was. That meant they knew the enemy's position down to the meter. Valerius's treachery had just handed them the perfect weapon, certainty. They're waiting for us on the ridge. She laid out the new plan, her voice hardening with command. But their target, Sharon, is in the cave system below. The ambush team is his outer defense. They think they're the hunters. We'll make them the bait. It was a high-risk, high-reward gambit. They would circle around, using a treacherous goat path the satellite imagery had missed, and come up behind the cave entrance. They would strike the heart of the operation while the ambush team was still staring at an empty ridge, waiting for ghosts. Grizz looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. He saw not just a soldier, but a commander. He nodded slowly. Let's hunt. The next few hours were a masterclass in stealth and lethality. Eva led them on a near-vertical descent, moving with the quiet confidence of a predator. They bypassed the ambush team completely, their comms silent. As they approached the cave entrance, they could see it was lightly guarded. All of Karen's best men were up on the ridge, waiting for a fight that would never come. Eva gave the signal. They moved in, a blur of synchronized violence. 2 guards fell without a sound. Inside, the cave opened into a massive cavern, bustling with activity. Weapons, explosives, and technology were being catalogued and prepared for shipment. And in the center of it all, a man with a scarred face and an arrogant demeanor directed the operation. Sharon. Eva and her team opened fire. The enclosed space erupted in chaos. The traffickers, caught completely by surprise, were cut down before they could mount a coherent defense. Sharon scrambled for a weapon, but Grizz was on him, tackling him to the ground. Within 90 seconds, it was over. The target was secure. The operation was crippled. Only then did Eva open her comms channel, keying the direct frequency to Garrick's command center, bypassing Valerius entirely. Commander Garrick, this is Rostova. Operation Sharon is a success. Target is secure. We encountered an enemy ambush party at the coordinates provided by Lieutenant Commander Valerius, but chose an alternate route. We are proceeding to the exfil point. The silence on the other end was profound. Then, Garrick's voice, rough with emotion he rarely showed, came through. Solid copy, Sergeant. Well done. Stand by for extraction. In the command center, Valerius heard the transmission and his blood ran cold. It was impossible. They were supposed to be dead. He saw Garrick turn to look at him, his eyes like chips of ice, and he knew it was over. The debrief was held in Garrick's office, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Valerius stood ramrod straight, trying to project an aura of control, but a tick in his jaw betrayed his terror. Eva and Grizz stood opposite him, their faces set like stone. Lieutenant Commander, Garrick began, his voice dangerously calm, Sergeant Rostova's after-action report suggests the intel you provided for her infiltration was compromised. It nearly led her and her team into a fatal ambush. Valerius scoffed, forcing a laugh. Sir, with all due respect, she's a junior sergeant who got lucky. She panicked, deviated from a perfectly sound plan, and stumbled into the objective. Her recklessness could have jeopardized the entire operation. My recklessness involved identifying a kill zone you personally designated as safe, Eva countered, her voice low but carrying immense weight. My luck was trusting my training over your doctored intel. This is absurd. Valerius blustered, turning to Garrick. Are you going to take the word of this woman over a decorated officer? Garrick didn't answer. Instead, he tapped a key on his console. A recording began to play. It was Valerius's voice, speaking to the comms tech. She's insane. She'll lose them on the mountain. Then another recording, this one of the data logs, showing Valerius himself altering the satellite imagery just minutes before Eva's team deployed. The color drained from Valerius's face. He was exposed, his betrayal laid bare for all to see. You are a disgrace to this uniform, Garrick said, his voice a low, furious growl. You tried to murder 4 of your own. You will be stripped of your rank. And he was cut off by the sudden shriek of the base's general quarters alarm. Red lights flashed, bathing the room in a hellish glow. An explosion rocked the building, throwing them all to the ground. The attack was sudden, massive, and brutally coordinated. Mortar rounds rained down, turning the airfield into an inferno. The perimeter fences were breached. The enemy poured in, not with the haphazard tactics of insurgents, but with the terrifying precision of elite soldiers. They knew the layout of the base. They knew the weak points. They had inside information. Garrick, struggling to his feet, grabbed a radio. "All stations, this is command. Repel borders. Defend your sectors." Another explosion, this one much closer, ripped through the side of the command building. Shrapnel tore through the air. Garrick cried out and fell, clutching a deep wound in his leg. In the chaos, Valerius saw his chance. His career was over, his life forfeit. But escape was still possible. He bolted for the door, a coward to the very end. "He's getting away," Grizz shouted, trying to apply pressure to Garrick's wound. But Eva was already moving. She ignored Valerius for the moment. Her priority was the command vacuum. The base's defense was collapsing into isolated pockets of resistance. Leadership was gone. She grabbed the command frequency handset from the floor. "This is Sergeant Rostova," she broadcast, her voice cutting through the panic and static with absolute authority. "Command is down. All squad leaders, report your status. Re-establish a defensive perimeter around the med bay and the armory. Concentrate your fire. Make every bullet count." Her voice, calm and resolute, was a lifeline in the storm. Soldiers, leaderless and terrified moments before, found their courage. They followed her orders. A new, more resilient defense began to form. With the line stabilizing, Eva turned her attention to the traitor. She saw Valerius sprinting across the tarmac, heading for a small maintenance vehicle. He wasn't just escaping, he was running toward the enemy line, ready to sell more secrets for his own survival. Eva broke into a dead sprint, weaving through explosions and gunfire. She was faster, fueled by a righteous fury. She tackled him hard, sending them both skidding across the gravel. He came up swinging, his face a mask of desperation. He was bigger, stronger, but she was a warrior. She moved inside his clumsy punches, her strikes precise and disabling. A blow to the throat, a knee to the solar plexus. He crumpled to the ground, gasping for air. She didn't kill him. She hauled him to his feet, secured his hands, and dragged him back toward the fighting. She handed the disgraced officer to two stunned Marines. "He's a traitor. Hold him for the commander." Then she turned back to the battle. She organized a counterattack, leading a small team to retake the main gate. She coordinated mortar support, calling in strikes with deadly accuracy. She was everywhere at once, a whirlwind of tactical brilliance and raw courage. By dawn, the attack was broken. The enemy was repulsed, their elite force shattered against the defense Eva had forged from chaos. The base was a wreck, but it held. Eva stood on the battered command center steps, covered in grime and blood, watching the smoke rise into the morning sky. Medics were tending to the wounded. Among them was Commander Garrick, propped up against a wall. He caught her eye. The look on his face was one of profound, unreserved respect. He saw not a sergeant, not a woman, not an underdog. He saw a leader. She had faced betrayal, stared into the abyss of chaos, and had not only survived, but had risen to command. Her past had forged her in fire, and in the crucible of battle, the steel had finally been revealed. The war was not over, but for Eva Rostova, the fight for her place in it was won.